I was 16 years old and I was writing software, and I was asked by a friend from my canoeing club, I have someone who needs the test equipment, who's making power supplies for special lighting, and this equipment he was designing. I said, I need someone to write the software for this. That's when I was 16.
I would like to learn a little bit more about you, and especially for the audience to know who you are. Can you just give us your background? How did you get into this crazy business in the first place, particularly with special lighting?
Well, it's more like, as probably many people share, there are those encounters and accidents happen when you're young. I was 16 years old, and I was writing software, and I was asked by a friend from my canoeing club, says, I have someone who needs the test equipment, who's making power supplies for special lighting, and they had the challenge that they want to pre-test some PCBs before they actually put power on, because the problem what they were facing was, if you apply power in a power supply and there's something wrong, it's easy to go up in smoke. So they wanted to test the circuit first with low power, low current, to make sure the circuit is probably right before they first time put real power on. And this equipment he was designing. I said, I need someone to write the software for this. That's when I was 16. And then I said, okay,
Wow.
let me try that. And then we did that. We ran that. And then we said, okay, you know what? I need more. So I said, okay, fine. So how do we do this now? Well, then I started my first business when I was 18 in Germany by offering that type of low power test equipment, computer controlled at that time. And I was writing the software and building up system blocks. That's what I did, and that's how I encountered that industry. And then I got another customer. They also had similar needs, and then they asked me, all right, you need to do an internship for your electronic engineering degree. At that time I was studying in Munich. And would you like to go to Asia? I said, yeah, I'd like to go to Asia. And then, because my mom, at that time there was a CeBIT show, the biggest computer show in Hanover. So she was on that computer show doing some part-time work, so helping during the show. So I got, as a high school student, I got the tickets to the show for free because I got them from my mom. And then I found, wow, all these Taiwanese companies, why there are so many Taiwanese computer manufacturers all exhibiting. And then we, as a young guys, we said, oh, that's great. We can get our hands on some latest computer tech, especially at the last day of the show. Why? Because a lot of Taiwanese manufacturers didn't want to carry the samples back home. So they sold them on the last day. So we were buying graphic card here and mainboard there and memory there and building up a computer case and putting our stuff together. So that was what we were like in high school. Yeah. And so I said, wow, what's going on in this island, this Taiwan? What is this? This is such a small island, but has such an industry. So I said, yeah, I want to go to Asia. So I got an internship at that time at Osram, Taiwan. So one of the biggest light manufacturer. And just when I came in there, the video projector industry took off here. And that video projector industry was concentrated about Taiwan OEM companies that were manufacturing for the big American computer brands, the Japanese, the Koreans. And then they said like, oh, you have this know-how. Maybe you can help us, our sales guy, to support the engineers. And in the beginning, the gentleman in Munich, Mr. Bernard, said it would be great if he could be 1 day a week at the customer. 2 weeks later, turn around. I was 4 days a week at the customer and 1 day at the office in Taipei. But the application, then you learn, oh, the video projector, at that time this is a DLP chip technology, from Texas Instruments, where you have almost 1 million mirrors at the size of your thumbnail that can be tilted by 12 degrees. The light had to be synchronized with the control of these mirrors.
Right.
So we had to develop a special driving method for that lamp that So the lamp still survives, but there's no flickering in the screen. Yeah, and then we were doing this.
That must have been an amazing adventure for a young kid.
Yeah, and I was 22, 23 doing this.
Yeah.
And my counterpart at Texas Instruments, at that time, we called her the composer queen, was Kara Atchison. And guess what? She's running a company in Taipei now.
Oh, cool. I didn't know.
So we're working together and then developing, and then you solve a problem, you design it. The projectors were that big at the beginning, and they came smaller and smaller and better and better and better. So there were lots of challenges to overcome during this process, and we had great fun to solve this. So long story short, I went back to complete my degree, came back to Taiwan, and at that time, I didn't close my contacts, so I restarted, worked again for Osram in the beginning, and then 6 months later, a gentleman from Carl Zeiss, the optics company, said, well, actually we see you running around, we need somebody on the ground that is working with the engineers on the ground. So I became the agent for Carl Zeiss Jena. And we were selling the optical systems for smaller projectors for about 6 years, 7 years, and that was a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear in your voice a certain enthusiasm and a passion for this lighting industry that to me just sounds very complex and a little bit scary. But what do you think it is about yourself, and this is a self-awareness question, that a lot of kids could have encountered those Taiwanese suppliers and they're selling their equipment, but you actually bought it. So what is it about yourself that's attracted to this whole industry?
How to say this? So first of all, I'm just like many young kids. I was a techie. I was writing software.
Yeah.
I was curious. I like to see new technology coming up, just like our kids are doing much better with their smartphones than their daddies and mummies do, right? And we see this. Look at my daughter, how she takes the videos and how she's holding the phone, and they say, oh, okay, she knows how to do the pose. I don't know that. Isn't that normal when you're young that you're curious, right? And then I came to Taiwan in the 1999 and 2000, and I see the enthusiasm also on the other side of the Taiwanese engineers, of the companies, of the people. Everybody was like, yeah, we want to do something new. We want to earn money. We want to build our country. And I came here as a 22-year-old. Great fun, young population. Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's cool. Let's be part of that. And earning some money in the same. Then dealing with problems, I already have some expertise and building more expertise. And then I figured out, the Taiwanese companies have a very sophisticated supply chain. Whether it is connectors, whether it is electronic components, whether it is PCBs, whether it is metal parts, all those things that you need to build this. There is a huge expertise in a very, very small constrained space of this little island.
It almost doesn't exist anywhere in the world, right? This concentration of expertise.
Yeah, as I say, there are two places that I would say are second to none. One is Taiwan, especially when it comes to semiconductor. That's the place.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to second one is in South China and Shenzhen, Dongguan area, where all the manufacturing, PCB related, PCB assembly is located. But they are only 1.5 flight hours away from each other.
Yeah.
And they are a very, very long way away from most designers and engineers in North America and Europe.
Right.
And
so
being able to access that cluster is very beneficial to not having a sky-high cost for the new products.
Right. And normally these manufacturers in the West, when they don't have somebody like you to facilitate the design and manufacturing, How do they normally solve this problem?
Okay, I would say their best friend is Google. And what they're looking for are English data sheets of the components. So a typical engineer that is educated in the West, they are relatively structured. They go, all right, I want to achieve this goal. Then I weigh my concept and I select my components from where I have access. So usually they select the components where they get the best data.
Yeah, marketing, right?
Yes. And then when they finish the design, they give it to their manufacturer or the purchaser and say, here, this is my design, I want to build this. And then the purchaser finds out, oh, yeah, your component has 34 weeks lead time. Great. 34 weeks lead time. Then the marketing guy will say, I don't have 40 weeks until I have my product. My customer will not accept.
Right.
And then these challenges that especially in Asia, especially in Taiwan and China, there are a lot of components, I call it with high similarities to branded components.
Oh, okay.
At a more affordable cost and shorter lead time. But those components tend to be not necessarily so visible to the Western engineer. Because how do they achieve the lower cost?
They don't have an English data sheet.
Or they do, but they don't spend the money on marketing.
Right.
Their advertisement budget is rather constrained. And because they're also saying, well, why do I have to advertise in the West? Because 80% of the electronic manufacturing is in Asia anyway. And my buyer is not the engineer. My buyer is the buyer of the manufacturer. So they market towards them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. So you're strategically positioned here in Taiwan to have
Yes.
access to the clusters of manufacturers out here.
And outside, because there are some parts where you just don't get them in China.
Okay.
So when you have some patented components or very specific stuff that may not be available. And Taiwan is uniquely positioned because we are at the crossroads. We do have Chinese-speaking staff. We do have access to the Chinese sphere, but we don't have capital constraints. We can wire money outside. We can buy from Malaysia, from Singapore, from America, from Europe. We can do this.
Yeah.
This is very good in Taiwan. Plus, we have engineering resources to access, which also can travel. They can travel to China freely. They can also travel in the West. So that's why I love Taiwan for exactly that characteristics.
Yeah. Yeah, it hits a sweet spot in multiple ways. And this is also why Taiwan has dominated the world for, computers, semiconductors, since
Well,
30 years.
you have to understand, if you now NVIDIA, the biggest company by market capitalization in the world, what are they doing? They're vertically integrating the data center technology into a chip. And that's done here in Taiwan because of the semiconductor industry.
Yeah.
And they drive that forward. They come from the graphic cards and they go into AI. And this story of vertically integrating part of a circuit that used to be on the PCB to integrate in the chip, that's where Taiwan is super strong. Together, of course, with mostly North American IC design capabilities, which is then incorporated in TSMC. But this is typically how it works. You have something that has a market. When the market grows, you vertically integrate part of your circuit. You make it smaller, you make it more compact, you make it less expensive. Therefore, you grow the market even more. Smartphone is no different.
Right. And then you're able to lower the price, grab more of the market, and keep vertically integrating.
Yes.
And then you have a monopoly.
Well, that depends on the marketing as well. But but generally speaking, this is how it happens here. Taiwan is not the one which is typically leading the world in coming up with the newest product. No. That's usually coming from outside. But what they are leading in is to integrate that and to drive the price down when it comes to the volume. And semiconductor technology is one key element to that. But being here at this, I call basically beating heart of that industry is a very nice experience.
Yeah. Okay, great. We learned a lot today. So yeah, thanks for all that.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll,
It's a pleasure to be here.
yeah, we'll see you in the next one.